G'day everyone. Today I'm speaking with someone who really doesn't need much of an introduction. Murad, probably the most well-known bull poster of SPX6900. Dude, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's really awesome to have you on.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Let's get stuck into it. Talk to me about SPX6900. Tell me what it is, run me through how you first came across it. And I think a really good place to start is break down why you have such a high conviction in this one particular token.
Yeah, so the first person who told me about it was my friend Pango, also goes by Rare Pangolin on Twitter. He was super early to a bunch of meme coins, including Pepe and Harry Potter Obama Sonic 10 Inu. And of course, he also was relatively early to SPX, MOG, Joe, etc. Back in the summer of 2023. So I kind of kept like slide tabs on it. And then when early 2024 came about, and as WIF and POPCAT started running, it kind of became clear to me that meme coins would play a bigger role this cycle in general. And that's when I started accumulating a variety of meme coins, kind of one by one. Back in those days, was still not clear like who was going to be the big winner. So my strategy was I'm just going to buy 10 of them that I think are like the cultiest. And ultimately, as I spend more time in the community, I've kind of learned more, got plugged into the cognosphere, kind of understood what's happening. And right now, my belief is that SPX6900 is the first ever movement coin. Essentially, as the meme coin supercycle was happening in mid to late 2024, it became abundantly clear that there were going to be like literally billions of meme coins. And I believe as of right now, like already 50 million plus got created. And so in that kind of environment, you're obviously in a different environment compared to 2021, right? So in 2021, you would have 60, 70 of the top 100 cryptos outperforming BTC. But in 2024, you only had 25 of them, and this year you only have 12 of them. And you have to ask yourself, why is this happening? I think for two reasons. One, obviously, Pumpfun kind of made coin creation seamless, but also meaningless. But on the other hand, obviously, with quantitative tightening and some of the macro stuff, obviously, the system isn't quite as flush with speculative liquidity as it was in 2021, right? So essentially, my question was, if there's going to be a billion meme coins, how do you win, right? And my immediate idea was that you have to buy what's the cultiest. Essentially, you have to buy things where most of the members are going to hold, most of the members are going to not only not trade that specific coin, but they're not going to trade in general. And they're going to kind of like promote the idea of that specific coin rather than kind of dabble in 20 different things. And in general, like I've been in crypto since 2013, since 2016 more actively. And the one thing that all of the past winners share is that they've developed these like hardcore cult-like communities, right? So immediately I was like, okay, let me find cults within memes. So that was the next step. And then I guess in general, I would say, let's say there's 15 to 25 cults within memes. My next question was, okay, within those 15 to 25 cults, what's like, who's going to win within those? And what's the next step in the evolution? And my theory, and I've been talking about this for a while now, but my theory is that the cults that evolve into full-fledged movements with the potential for global virality, that really kind of tap into the hearts and souls of the generation, right? They're the ones that are going to win. And so SPX6900, to me, not only does it have the best metrics that you can see clearly on chain, but I think the memetics are the strongest. I think the mission is the most ambitious, and the community I think is the most passionate. So I think it's going to be the winner in the coming months, and I'm very excited kind of for the weeks and months to come.
Hell yeah. New term kind of thrown in there. Because we've had like meme coins, cult coins, all kinds of coins sticking kind of prefixes on them. Movement coin. What do you mean by the term movement as a broader concept?
Essentially, it's a coin that doesn't just exist meaninglessly, but it has a clear goal. It has a clear mission, right? It has a clear direction that the entire community can unite against. And in the case of SPX6900, whether you call it a movement coin or a mission coin, the mission is to flip the stock market, right? And I think that at first glance, you might think that this is completely delusional and absurd, but I think it actually taps perfectly into not only the current zeitgeist, but in a lot of the trends that I think are going to accelerate even more in the next 5 to 10 years, right? So I strongly believe that, for example, income inequality and wealth inequality are going to intensify even more, right? Money printing and therefore inflation and therefore food prices and therefore housing prices are going to intensify even more, right? Now, housing prices and wages, the gap between them is going to widen even more, in my opinion. AI, whether it's going to happen slowly or fast, but sooner or later, it's going to be coming for people's jobs, right? The robotics will only intensify this even more, and so on and so forth. And I think this essentially creates a need for people to, in my opinion, unite behind the banner of a countercultural movement. And I think we've seen examples of this in the past. Obviously, with BTC, the famous chancellor is on the brink of second bailout, right? Very famous. I think GME was a kind of a glimpse of a similar idea in 2021. And my belief is that SPX6900 is kind of the movement that is next in that chapter. Furthermore, the way I think of it is what BTC did to gold, I think SPX6900 is doing to GME. In other words, it's a 10x improvement, right? Just like BTC is kind of more portable, more divisible, more deflationary than gold, I believe that SPX6900 is similarly superior to GME. You know, we don't have any board of directors that can issue shares. We don't have any kind of brick and mortar buildings or businesses that can slow us down. We are much more decentralized, trading predominantly on various blockchains rather than on kind of centralized brokerages. I'm sure you can understand where I'm going with this, right? So I think it's an improvement. It's the next stage in that sort of countercultural, but at the same time financialized asset.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, we need to tell the gold bugs that Bitcoin is an improvement and get them to stop buying gold right now. That would be great for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's only a matter of time until the world understands that BTC is superior to gold. I mean, BTC is 16 years old, but in practice, more like 7, 8 years old in terms of like being in the kind of in the global, on the global forefront, so to speak. And so things like that, they take time, right? They take time. But ultimately, I believe that BTC is going to flip gold. So it's just a matter of time.
Okay. I like this. Adjust the time preference kind of thing. As you were saying before, we do find ourselves in this very kind of like interesting point in time where there's this like massive widening gap between hyper wealthy and, you know, you get this sense that the middle class is being like dragged back. Like destruction of that kind of like middle sector of wealth, and everyone's kind of, at least on crypto Twitter, everyone does have this kind of felt sense of, to varying degrees, escaping the permanent underclass, if you will. And a lot of people see crypto more broadly as a way out. How do you kind of think about, like, crypto's fucking volatile. And like, listen, I'm fully deployed in markets or in stables, but like 100% of my net worth, it doesn't exist in physical possessions like, you know, houses, cars, that kind of thing is in the market. I clearly think that this is a reasonable way to gain, you know, edge on the rest of the market elsewhere. What are your thoughts around crypto as a vehicle, like longer term? Because I know that you have SPX, but how do you think of the industry, and what's your reasoning behind why it's an improvement on physical, more, you know, stocks, more traditional assets, gold, silver, precious metals, those kind of things?
So we need to be nuanced in terms of time frames, and we need to be nuanced in terms of various aspects here. So this is what I'll say. I don't think crypto is this utopian thing that solves inequality, like, for everybody forever, obviously. And actually, I actually think during its growth stage, I would even dare to say it might amplify inequality even more. And I'll tell you why. If hyper-Bitcoinization happens, even if it happens like 15 years from now or 20 years from now, BTC will probably be generally more concentrated in its ownership compared to fiat money, which is an inferior product in my opinion. So I think so this is the way I see it, right? During the period between now and final like equilibrium of hyper Bitcoinization, I think in some ways crypto will make the world more unequal, just because there's like fewer individuals owning like large chunks of these assets. But I think once hyper Bitcoinization is there, it will actually make savings more viable, right? Mm-hmm. The big problem with fiat money is that essentially it makes saving impossible or very difficult, right? Depending on who you ask, even if you're sitting in bonds, you're not really beating like the money printer. You're not really beating inflation, right? So, and my opinion is, if we have a deflationary money, then saving is going to be more viable, right? So in that sense, in the far future, I think it's going to be beneficial for people with less, because now you have an asset which is not going to be diluted, which means now you can, depending on how labor will even exist in the future, you will be able to save, right? Now, in general though, I think both AI and crypto, they're not really inequality solvers. In many ways, they're probably going to be inequality amplifiers in the next 20 years. Now, some people say that, some of these meme coins are going to solve inequality. I mean, as a whole, meme coins are not going to solve inequality, because, as I've always said, 99.999% of meme coins are scams, right? And not that they're somewhere, but they're scams at worst, and just short-term, fruitless pumps and dumps at best, right? And so my view is that for retail to survive and for retail to thrive, they need to invest in assets where they have an edge, right? I mean, if a retail person goes and like tries to be like a at-home quant or trading in equities markets where they don't really have much of an edge, they're going to be competing against people that have either more information, better infrastructure, they're more capitalized, etc., right? So my idea is retail is kind of like a swarm of bees, and I think the intelligent game theory is for retail to unite behind certain movements, especially right now given the current zeitgeist, where they will be able to have an advantage. And I think the advantage that retail have, and especially younger people have, is being better at social media. So I think, in my view, the memetic movements which will succeed are going to be those which have collected enough people that are almost solely focused on that one coin, that one community, that one movement, that aren't like trading and gambling, and that are going very, very hard on social media. And I think if you think about where we are in the world, I think that's like the game theoretically optimal strategy. And my view is that SPX6900 is exactly that vessel.
That's quite interesting. It's very much like memetic revolution kind of thing. I feel like XRP almost nailed this from like 2014. It's like almost like the first primitive of this example of like, I don't think anyone who even owns XRP could tell me. It's got more layers of obfuscation to it. Because it's like, oh, well, we're replacing Swift. And it's like, doubtful. But everyone that holds it has this like aggressive price target, and they're just like, no. Like, if particularly in Australia, for some reason, it's the asset that older people tend to hold. Like, it's the older person's crypto asset. It's the Memecoin. The number of people that you speak to that are like, yeah, I've got 50K in XRP. I don't own any Bitcoin or ETH or anything else, but I have XRP. It's stunning. So I feel like SPX is almost like the modern version of this, aimed at a younger audience that has better tooling that can actually push it higher. Okay. And less of like the technology, we're going to do all these little things with it.
So my view on XRP is that it's definitely a cult. It definitely is an example of that kind of thing that you alluded to. I think their memetics, in my opinion, attract people with what I call, they have Stockholm syndrome, in the sense that the core memetics of XRP is like, we're going to be the cryptocurrency for banks, or we're going to be the payment network for banks. And I think a lot of people, older people in the Western world, they're more sort of bought into the system, right? And so they're like, oh, it's like for banks, like if banks are buying it, it means it's important, or if suits are promoting it, that means it's important, right? And it looks like professional, and it looks like classy, it looks like we're going to, like the large serious financial institutions with serious adults are going to be using this for their international commerce, right? And this is why I think the boomers like it, because they grew up between the 50s and the 90s. They grew up in that like kind of suits era, and so to them it seems like it's like the good old days of doing business. You know what I mean? And SPX6900 is the polar opposite in my opinion. It's actually trying to kind of flip the stock market, in other words, flip the system. It's actually saying no, fuck the institutions. We're going to do something crazier, something completely different, something bottoms up rather than top down.
Yep. Dude, I remember when your Token 2049 Keynote last year from Token in Singapore was probably the most mega viral kind of like crypto piece of content to come out of any conference possibly ever. That was like a wash on the timeline. Couldn't go anywhere without seeing it. Is there anything that you'd want to update or add to that talk? And I'll stick it in the show notes for people to go watch, because it captured the zeitgeist at the time very, very well. But yeah, what would you freshen up on that at all?
So generally and directionally, all my views are still the same, and I stand by 95% of what was said in that presentation still. One thing I would slightly adjust is based on how the markets have evolved since then. And I think both Pumpfun and quantitative tightening so far, up until now, are kind of like to blame for this. But essentially, my view is don't hold like 30 meme coins. Like hold 1 to 3 or hold 1 to 5 that are very strong this cycle so far, right? Essentially, if like the one thing I would tweak since September 2024 is you have to be more concentrated, right? There's no such thing as diversification with these things. They're all generally going to move in the same direction, but the strong ones are going to go up more during good times and go down less during bad times because they have better people. And the weak ones are going to go up less during good times and go down more during bad times, right? Times, I mean these like multi-week periods, right? And so I would strongly encourage people to like buy strength. Essentially, one very important thing to understand is that right now is like kind of different from 2021, where people were like getting steamy checks and then punting on crypto with that. And then like you could just essentially buy any crypto in the top 300 and it would be like, it would go up, right? Right now it's not like that. And right now the market is more selective, the market is more mature, which means that specific people behind the coin, the specific quality of the people and specific passion of the people behind the coin, what's going on behind the scenes, what things are happening. These things are much more important now, and you have to be much more selective. I would also advise you to long like category leaders, because I think if you look at the outperformers like in the last 2 years, what investors are doing, both retail and institutional in my opinion, is they're not gambling at like number 3, number 4 in any category. They're just saying, okay, like I'm just gonna buy whatever. If I believe in the category, I'm just gonna buy that category leader. And again, that's why I like SPX6900, because I think it's not only the leader in meme coins in terms of performance over the past 3 years, it's also the leader in the movement coin, which I think is essentially a whole new category that it's pioneering.
I'm interested to get your take on market structure at the moment. I think the most recent kind of sell-off, people have concluded that we've topped 126K October. That's it. Pack it up. We're cooked for a bit. I'm very interested to know what you think of like price direction at this point in time. So we're recording it October 17th. Just generally kind of like your thoughts on the 4-year cycle kind of meta as we move on, because it would be a perfect 4-year cycle top if it was to have peaked when it did earlier this month.
Yeah. So I think the sellers we're getting right now are people that are essentially 4-year cycle believers. I actually still remain bullish. My view is that this cycle is going to be longer than the usual 4 cycle. I think I can see it being 4.5 years, even 5 years, something like that. I think that gold is going to top sometime in the next few weeks. I think it's going to start chopping, going sideways, and that's, I think, when BTC catches up, because I think BTC is both a much better product and also an asset with much greater upside. I think generally, when you start seeing queues of people lining up for gold bars, I mean, the upside is limited from that point on, in my opinion.
Yep.
I mean, of course, this can continue for like another 6 weeks, but generally, I think in the coming weeks and months, I think gold is going to top, and I think BTC is going to play catch up. I'm still bullish. I don't care about the bears, and I think BTC is going to 200K.
Fuck yeah. That's what we like to hear. Yeah, that dude, seeing people literally standing in lines, like it's happening in Sydney. I was there. There are people literally queuing up around like the bullion stores. You just think to yourself, like, how could you stand in a line like that and be like, yep, still early. Don't worry. Like, there's miles to go on this. What happened to because you mentioned some of it before about like picking a basket of memes in the early days, but you know, what happened to the famous Murad list? Where did that go?
So I'm still holding every single coin. I have not touched a single one of my coins since August 2024, and I'm going to continue holding them for, like essentially for a very long time. Obviously, the whole point of the 10 coins was that some coins are going to do better, some coins are going to do worse, but that was exactly the point for why I did the 10 coins list. Again, because we aren't in 2021, and the market is more competitive, more selective. People are essentially like, there are only so many coins that can be coins that are full of diamond-handed hodlers. Because for every diamond-handed single coin hodler believer, there are like 100 volatility junkie traders, which means that as far as crypto Twitter is concerned, there are only a certain number of coins that can be these like shelling points for diamond handing. And then people are like, well, I want to be a diamond handed hodler. Let me go to a coin which also has predominantly diamond handed hodlers, which means that only so few coins can make it. Again, a big reason for this is Pumpfun, which like the micro cap pumps and dumps that it has, it sucks out a lot of the speculative flows, right? From the cult coins. And also, again, it's not 2021, and we had QT. So two things to understand. I think this is what you got to understand. I think most of CT is like trader junkies, mercenary volatility junkies, and actually normal people, they're actually just like the XRP people you mentioned. They're much better at holding for years in a row, you know, without selling, without trading, because they have actual lives, they have jobs. They have like normal, they have normal existence. You know, they're not like sitting in front of the computer trying to scalp 2% move at 5 a.m. Right? While you know, you get what I'm saying. And so two things to understand. Everything that happened this cycle so far happened while we still had quantitative tightening, right? Which is kind of interesting. I think this is why the price action looks more like slow and steady rather than parabolic. It's because we didn't have QE, we had QT. But a couple of days ago, the American Central Bank has signaled a potential pause to QT, which I think is bullish, because if you study the past 2-3 cycles, whenever QT stopped, alt seasons began, or alt BTC pairs started performing much better. So I think the best is yet to come. And two, I don't think retail is here yet, because if you look at any of the metrics that gauge kind of retail participation, they're nowhere to be seen. I think everything so far was CT and institutions only. That's it, right? And we know institutions have been mostly buying like BTC, ETH, ETFs, and that. So I think retail isn't here yet, and I think the best is yet to come.
Fuck yeah, wonderful. This is exactly the kind of information that I want to be hearing. Outside of because you're still holding the top 10, you obviously have a fuckload of SPX. What else do you hold? What does the Murad portfolio look like at the moment?
So it's the 10 meme coins that I have. SPX6900, Giga, MOG, Harry Potter, Obama, Sonic 10, Inu, PopCat, Retardio, Lokin, Mini, and USA, and Apu. And I also have BTC.
Nice. That's it? Fuck yeah, wonderful. Yeah, because you were mentioning BTC before, and I was like, yeah, surely you'd be like, I feel like based on the timeline, a lot of crypto Twitter does not have. I mean, I'm saying it like I'm like better than everyone else, but I don't own enough BTC. I think there was a long period where I was like, fuck yeah, I'm outperforming BTC by like a huge margin. This is great. I'm a genius. And now I'm like, fuck, I should have pumped more profits back into BTC longer term. But that's something I'll have to adjust moving forward. Dude, I've been watching some of the content recently. I actually really liked the how to spot 100x kind of like liquid investment thing from the YouTube side. I see you've been upping the game on the content a lot. What do you think that people should know more about with crypto as just like general stuff? What is it that people should know when they come to the space?
Honestly, I've been talking about this for the past 2 years, but I'm a big proponent of the barbell strategy, and I think it has done well in the last 2 years. I think you want to hold BTC. Essentially, think of it as your like crypto savings or like the crypto kind of dry powder, right? And that's on one extreme, on the conservative extreme. These are kind of like your crypto bonds, so to speak. And I think on the other extreme, you want something that can actually like 100x, right? Plausibly, potentially even more. But here's where people get wrong. When like essentially they think that if the coin is smaller, it's going to pump more, but that's not how it works. The coin that's going to pump more is the coin that's closer to critical mass. This is what people don't understand. So people want to escape the rat race, and because they are either desperate or low on funds, relatively speaking, or they are impatient, they go and they gamble on Pumpfun or just buy some other tiny microcap somewhere in hopes that that's going to be their ticket to nirvana, right? But in reality, that's actually very high risk, and like your chance of making it based on on-chain statistics is like 1 out of 100,000. You know what I mean? So your
and it's
better
only
bet
getting worse. Yeah.
Your better bet, in my opinion, is the following. It's buying things that essentially you have to ask yourself, what is most likely to like 50x plus? Where the community is going crazy and not giving up. Essentially, the crazy community not giving up, that decreases your risk. Because you essentially have like this brotherhood that we're all working for each other. That's what we're doing. We're all working for each other's sake. And in the case of microcaps, you don't have that. Because the holding time for people there is like minutes, hours at best. While with these like giant cults, giant movements, people are trying to hold for 5 years plus. Right? So this is the thing. I'll be blunt, not financial advice, but buy BTC and SPX6900.
Okay, that's the barbell strategy.
In general, I would say you are much better off buying coins that have been doing well for the past 18 months. Why? Because if they have been doing well for the past 18 months, that means there's much higher chance that there's something special going on there. There's some kind of a special sauce, whether it's people hustling behind the scenes or some kind of a fundamental mimetic emotional resonation that is likely, if it's done well in the past 18 years, I think it's much more likely to do better in the next 18 years. If it's done well in the past 18 months, it's much more likely to do well in the coming 18 months. And essentially, the reason I like SPX6900 is because it's the smallest out of the outperformers. Or the second smallest out of all the outperformers of BTC among the top 100 this year so far.
Okay. Why do you think the SPX community is just the movement behind it? Why is it so strong? Because I remember, like, this is something that I have vague ideas of. Like, again, we were talking before the show. I did not stop trading and did not believe in something enough. I still have a small amount, but if I'd held the initial amount that I had in SPX that I bought in like late 2023 when I was like shitcoining on ETH and buying a bunch of random shit over there.
You would be buying mansions in Sydney right now.
Exactly. Maybe not in Sydney, but somewhere else. But yeah, no, like, and it is one of those things of like, I remember seeing that and not really following my own thinking on it. But I remember seeing the SPX6900 guys in fucking group chats when the coin was, quote unquote dead for months. And they were just like in there, like 30 of the guys just hanging out talking about SPX. But like, that's my understanding of it. Why do you think that the SPX crew stuck so hard to it?
So honestly, there's like 35 reasons, but I'll kind of talk about 5 or 6 that I think are the most important. So first thing is the very first thing you alluded to. The initial people that were involved in it were essentially pure-hearted people. And I think this is what I call trickle-down culture, like trickle-down economics. It's trickle-down culture. Like the second wave inherits from the first wave. The third wave inherits from the second wave. That's how it works. And essentially, the early people, Baperol, Mung, Hype, Based God, Ascara, a bunch of other people, Nichols, of course, they were people that are not your usual CT degenerates. They were people that were like pure-hearted, very clean, long-termist, and are more interested in kind of building something meaningful and rather than gambling, right? They were essentially spiritually pure. And they were like good-hearted people. And I think, believe it or not, that paid very high dividends and is going to continue to pay dividends. Why? Because I'm not going to say I'm pure, but I aspire to be, right? I aspire to be. And I saw that purity in those guys, and that's what made me interested to join. Because essentially I saw myself in them, or I saw that like clean light. I think you would agree that the world is like rapidly, in many ways, right? I don't want to be like a doomer, but in many ways, like the world is like people are becoming more degenerate, more short-termist, more kind of like corrupt, soulless, nihilistic. And in those guys, I saw that kind of purity, belief, wholesomeness, and I like that because essentially I like to be different in a world like where 99% is going one way, I like to go the other way. And if 99% is becoming like nihilistic and soulless, I actually want to at least try, right? At least try to be pure and spiritual and like believe in something, right? I want to believe in something. So that's one thing. The initial people involved, they make or break a coin, in my opinion, right? I think this applies to all coins essentially. Essentially, the initial 10 to 20 or the initial 50 people are very important. That's the first thing. Second thing is the actual memetics, aka the actual culture. I think it is incredible because all of the coins that have done well in crypto, they were the coins that essentially managed to develop, one way or another, managed to develop a culture of hodl. And my opinion is that stop trading and believe in something is the new age hodl. It's essentially a battle chant, a motto, a hymn, so to speak, right? And stop trading and believe in something, flip the stock market, etc. It has all the right memetics. Why? Because all of these, they actually create the right culture. Stop trading and believe in something, it makes people diamond hand, which is what you want.
It's a fantastic phrase, man. I still just say it, not even in reference to SPX. I'm like, stop trading and believe in something. Great.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's good for two reasons. One is because it makes you hodl and diamond hand at the financial level. But two, like the believe in something and literally half of SPX6900 memes being obsessed with belief, it's refreshing because we know instinctively, right? If you're smart enough, you instinctively know that people, like the average person out there, doesn't believe in anything anymore. Now we can talk about why that's the case with the fiat money, with the techno-capitalism, etc. I'm not going to get into that right now. But essentially, it's refreshing because my view, first of all, personally, but also in my view, there's like hundreds of millions of good people out there that actually want to believe in something, right? They actually want to be a part of something. They actually want to be behind good people. They actually want to unite together to do something great, right? So that's second reason. Third reason, and I think that's underrated, is it actually has a mission and it actually has a goal. And I think that's what makes it stronger than most of the other coins. Most other coins don't have a mission. And that's a problem. Because when you have a mission, you wake up in the morning, you're more motivated on average in general. And two, it's like, is the mission achieved? No, then we're going to continue. And the fourth thing, and I think that's also very important, not only does it have a mission, but the mission is like ridiculously ambitious, which means that it's like XRP people believe in $400 targets, right? Well, SPX6900 takes it to another level, and we believe in 69 trillion, right? Which is on a whole nother level, which is bullish. Honestly, like my honest view is that all these factors are going to end up in causing SPX6900 to go to like 2-3 trillion. That's what I think. Because essentially, like shoot for the skies, end up at the moon. And this is what SPX community is doing. In general, essentially, like the combination of culture memetics and like the right DNA of people, what's happening is SPX is kind of becoming the BTC of memes, in my opinion, right? And I'm not trying to offend Harry Potter, Obama, Sonington, Inu with their ticker Bitcoin, which by the way was like incredibly clever. But what I'm trying to say is SPX6900 is becoming kind of like the meme coin leader, in my opinion, because it has like both the whales and the middle class and the lower class, everybody, they're like diamond handing. And this is what you need for crazy parabolas to happen.
Something interesting that you mentioned before was the idea of the like religion element that I think is fundamentally interesting that you kind of tied in. There is a growing, well, ever since like, late 80s, there's been a just like rapid increase of atheism, but now we're starting to see a lot of people, particularly young dudes, are swinging like more religious, more conservative. And atheism, I think, is on the downtrend net with young people. I think I'm kind of making some stats up there, but fuck it, we'll bro science it. What are your thoughts on memes and this idea of like digital religions? It's something you've talked about a lot, but I'd love to hear more of your thoughts around this idea of, it's kind of a meme in and of itself. Stop trading and believe in something. But I think that you mean something a lot more than just like, haha, this is a funny thing to post on Twitter.
Yeah. So first things first, not to offend any of religious people in any way, but essentially, we've discussed that the strongest meme coins are going to be cults, and the strongest cults are going to be movements. And my idea was like, if there's ever going to be anything even stronger than that, essentially, like I'll put it this way. One of the, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why BTC has succeeded as much as it did is because it's essentially a new age religious movement. Because a non-trivial percentage of Bitcoin people are so extremely passionate and zealous about it that they genuinely believe that the higher Bitcoin goes, the more it's going to purify the world, right? The more it's going to purge the world of like dishonesty and corruption and darkness, right? And I'm sure you're familiar, there's like tens of thousands of blogs alluding to similar ideas. Now, essentially, the way to think about it, like from a pragmatic perspective, from like an investment analyst perspective, the closer your coin is to religion, the stronger it's going to be, right? Again, it's all the same arguments that you're going to have for cults and movements, but essentially turbocharged to yet another level. Why? Because it's all the same thing. Like just think of cults, movements, and religions as this like 3 stacks of this steroids, right? Essentially. And the reason I say this is because the more of this kind of spirituality is embedded into coin/community, the more people are likely to do what you would like them to do in an idealized world, right? As an investor, as a believer, as a participant, as a community member, your best outcome is if as many people as possible and to the highest intensity as possible are believing, hodling, DCAing, not trading this coin, not trading any other coins, making media, promoting this, making TikToks, making YouTubes, making Reddits, posting on Twitter, posting on Facebook, onboarding people on the street, and essentially evangelizing and spreading the gospel, right? And this is the reason, but at a deeper, more, that's kind of at the investment level. Mm-hmm. At a deeper, more philosophical level, yeah, I know there's been a slight uptick in religious belief over the past 2-3 years. I actually think it's driven by the fact that young men are essentially finding themselves discriminated against in the Western society in some ways, right? And that's why I think they're also congregating in groups, or they're kind of returning to tradition, so to speak, right? My view is that people, but essentially that's happening in the short term. I think since the 50s, though, there's a clear trend towards people becoming less religious. I have a theory about why that's happening. I think the wealthier a society becomes, and by wealthy I don't mean money, I mean like when a civilization becomes more advanced in the sense of having running water and shelter and food that you don't have to worry about essentially those people find themselves praying less. I think this is a clear explanation behind why Scandinavian countries, which are the wealthiest in the world when it comes to GDP per capita or income per capita, I think that's why they are like 55% atheist. It's essentially, they have the things that makes other people pray, you know? And I don't mean to be cynical, but I think that's the explanation. While I think there's a clear correlation essentially, while poorer countries are generally more likely to be religious. Now, this correlation doesn't hold perfectly because there are countries that are poorer and that are very atheist. And for example, some countries in Eastern Europe, they're not exactly the wealthiest countries in Europe, but they're also very atheist because of, I believe, a post-Soviet
Soviet Union went through and
exactly.
said, hey, religion's not allowed. So
Right.
you kind of eviscerated the religious structures in people. Yeah.
And I can also give you examples of countries that are very wealthy and are also very religious as well. So it's not a perfect rule, but I think there is a correlation there, and I've encountered studies to show this. That being said, there are consequences to all this, and my idea is, even though society has gotten wealthier in terms of like, it's like a Maslow pyramid. Even though we solved like the first couple of steps, and people compared to 100 years ago, they have to worry about food less, they have to worry about like murder on the streets less and stuff like that. Even though we solved these things, I think the byproduct is that other things have emerged, right? And I think that even though we now have more food and more entertainment and more abundance at the material level, I think that in many ways that took away from the spiritual, because now, precisely because of that infrastructure, what's happening is you need your village less, you need your community less, you need family less, you need a wife less, you need your children less, you need your husband less, right? And that has essentially, you need your community less, and that has, in my opinion, made people lonely. I think that made people feel kind of empty. That made people feel hollow inside, right? I think this is why you have people collecting things and buying materialistic goods, trying to signal status with certain items, buying Labubus or whatever, diamond watches.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, and I think also a byproduct of this is arguably maybe healthier, maybe unhealthy things, but essentially things like CrossFit and dietary cults and various video game communities, collecting card communities, music festivals. I think it sounds crazy, but I think these things are kind of like replacers for a lot of this like communal feel. And I think the best crypto assets are also going to be providing that kind of communal feel to people, right? And I think SPX6900 with its Cognisphere is the first time I've felt something like this since Bitcoin in 2016. And this is like a big reason why I'm very bullish on it as well.
Yeah.
Essentially, it again, maybe not perfectly, but I think it partially serves as that like soulful, spiritual, communal product, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is what like DeFi investors or like institutional crypto investors, they don't understand, because like they're not really in these communities. So, and they're a bit cynical. But you know, if you're a good investor, you actually have to be someone with high empathy. And again, I actually think that EQ is going to be more important than EQ in the next 20 years. Why? Because AI is going to disrupt IQ faster than it disrupts EQ, which means that the next wave of growth and outperformance will be like stemming from EQ, which means that you will, like 6 months from now, no human in the world will be able to beat even an independent AI in terms of combining all the numbers and all the metrics together, like in its head, so to speak. But humans will still be better for a few years than AI in understanding humans. And I think this is what not only the next wave of investment outperformance will come from, but actually the next wave of actual kind of trends and communities and coins will come from. It's how can I find human connection, ultimately, right? And this is one of the things that SPX6900 is solving, is providing that community. It's essentially, SPX6900 is like putting hand out, and it's like saying like, if you're a good person, and if you're a person who's like long-termist, pure and patient, and actually wants to do something cool in the world, rather than just to like quickly scam your friend to go buy a watch or something. If you actually want to do something cool, then join SPX6900. That's kind of like part and parcel of the product/service/community here, right?
Yep. Yeah, it is. The death of community and just like the death of religion as a general trend is really interesting. And it is that kind of thing of like, you lack the difficulty and you lack the desire or need to do that kind of like extracurricular spiritual activity. When all the needs are met, you don't really have to rely on anyone, depend on anyone. And this is just like a meta kind of like, it's a pretty like mid-level observation of the way things are going. But it was something that it was quite interesting that showed up at the Network State conference in Singapore after Token. And yeah, one of my like kind of favorite talks that I ended up watching after because I missed in the morning was around this idea of, if you're in crypto and you have a decent amount of money, you should be using it to fund community events at like local settings. You should be funneling that into making networks of people IRL to do things. So I just think I think it's nice to see this cropping up out of crypto, which I think gets a reputation for being like a hyper online, everyone's sitting in a fucking dark room wearing hoodies, staring at a screen all day, and just kind of this impetus to be like, that's not going to work. This sucks. You're going to be fucking miserable. Go out, do something, meet people, make it happen. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I like to say excess is bad for the soul. And I think like that like explains some of the dynamics here.
No, 100%. I did want to touch on one thing that we mentioned before that I kind of like, it fell out of my brain before, but it's come back and I'm like, aha. How do you think of Pumpfun as something and its impact on the market moving forward? Like, because we've talked about this idea, and I really like it. I like the spiritual terminology of like the fact that like, dude, Baproll still messages me, and it's fantastic. He'll be like, hey man, just checking in, SPX6900. I'm like, fuck yeah, Baproll. But like this idea that there are spiritually pure crypto holders, and again, I do not want to put words in your mouth, but like, do you think of like Pumpfun and just not the actual protocol, but just like the development of it? I happen to like the Pumpfun guys. I think they've unlocked a bunch of shit. I think it's a cool product. But like in a spiritual sense, do you almost see that as like a biblical version of Gomorrah? Like this idea of like its wickedness in terms of like what it does to people that become addicted to going there and hitting Axiom and getting like a 3% fucking clip and being like, yes, out for one soul kind of behavior.
Yeah. So several points here. First of all, I don't blame Pumpfun because it was the right idea at the right time. And essentially, if it wouldn't be these guys, someone else would have created it. Because essentially, there is an inherent demand to be able to one-click create coins, right? Now, in one sentence, this is what I think Pumpfun did. I think Pumpfun is horrible for weak coins, but it's good for strong coins. And I'll explain why. Essentially, simplistically speaking, you should put every crypto participant that ever exists or ever will exist into one of the two buckets that we've already discussed previously. One is going to be people that want to like trade and rotate, right? And one is going to be people that want to hodl and diamond hand. And so what Pumpfun did is, this is what Pumpfun did. It caused the overall number of coins in the market to increase by 1,000-fold. And therefore, what it did was it actually reduced the number of coins that are beating Bitcoin, which in a weird perverse way, you can actually argue that Pumpfun is good for crypto because it essentially makes the degenerate things even more degenerate. Essentially, it increases the supply of degenerate and kind of meaningless coins by such a large extent that actually a diamond-handed believer type investor is actually now faced with a smaller choice of good coins. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Essentially, for example, in the past you would have 100 good coins and 500 shit coins. Right now you have 20 good coins and 5 billion shit coins. You know what I mean? And it actually reduces the hodl coin count, which I think is good, because now effectively now your choice is, in 2021 your choice was BTC or these other 300 coins, but now essentially your choice is BTC or these other 15 coins, which I think is good. Does that make sense? So and essentially this applies both to meme coins, but actually all altcoins. Pumpfun kind of weakens the median and the average ceiling of the bottom 99% of coins by increasing their supply. But what this actually means is the investors that want to hodl, and actually I believe that the wave of absolutely normal retail participants that are eventually going to come in the coming months, I think them as well, they're actually going to essentially now choose between these kind of, call it 10 coins that I mentioned in my last video, right? And I think this is very bullish for SPX6900, because the smart play is to just buy the leader, the smart play is just to buy the outperformer, and the smart play is just to buy the coin, which is the shelling point for diamond-handed whales, retail, everybody. Essentially, you want as many diamond-handed as possible.
Okay. What makes you think that there's going to be more like retail coming in? Because this has been a very kind of like controversial topic for like the last 2 years, where like it's almost like, oh fuck guys, we're retail. And that's been like the almost attitude on CT of like, retail's coming. It's like, no, it's not. We're retail. This is it. Like it's just going to be us. We're all going to be stuck here forever. That's kind of like the doomer attitude. What makes you think that there's going to be a shitload more people pile into the industry moving forward?
Okay, so I think it has to do with how fast BTC moves. And essentially, usually retail comes in the last like 4 to 6 months of a cycle, right? Now, some people think that the cycle is already over. I actually don't think so. I think the biggest wave is yet to come. Again, if you look at any of the metrics, retail isn't here yet. Why? Because BTC has been moving very steadily. And that actually, when BTC is moving steadily, that's not good for headlines. Because for headlines, you want crazy parabola, or early crazy parabola type news, you know what I mean? But actually, if you chart BTC price and the Fed balance sheet on TradingView, for example, what you will see is typically Bitcoin and crypto overall does well when the balance sheet goes up, and it does badly when balance sheet goes down. For example, the 2018 bear market coincided perfectly with the Fed essentially reducing their balance sheet, right? Essentially, the central banks reducing their balance sheet is bad for crypto generally. However, these past 2 years were kind of peculiar in the sense that the Fed has been reducing their balance sheet, but BTC has gone up. And so I would even dare to go as far as saying, from central bank perspective, the bull market hasn't even begun. See, I know it sounds crazy because BTC has gone from 15K to 125K, but I think that was mainly because of ETFs and debts, right? I think that was mainly essentially institutional adoption. And I think if QT gets paused and some of the other central banks start pursuing more sort of liquidity-friendly policies, even more than they already have been doing, which is quite plausible, especially in the context of a few more rate cuts coming. I think that's when you're going to see BTC do its move to 200K, and simultaneously when we are going to have what I call selective alt season. How
did you get into crypto first? What was it that kind of like dragged you in? You're talking about a 2018 bear market. You've clearly been around for a while. What's the backstory?
I lived in China in 2013, 2014. And
sick. I lived in China in 2016. Where did you live?
Beijing.
Oh, dope. I was in Guangzhou for like a year.
Oh, nice, nice. It's quite an experience, isn't it?
Yeah, it's cool. I fucking loved it. Yeah, I think it was awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. It's like top 3 experiences for me for sure. I had an American friend there that, believe it or not, was like employee number 4 or employee number 5 at what ended up becoming OKX. Back then it was called OK Coin, and he was the first foreign employee, and obviously his job was like international marketing, international partnerships, things like that. And he kind of got me deeper into the BTC, like BTC rabbit hole, right? And ever since then, I kind of like got into it, and then kind of like forgot about it in 2014, 2015, and then 2016, things were starting to slowly heat up again, and I kind of been doing full-time crypto ever since.
What is the? I know that you've got SPX targeted for 69 trillion, but like and you've mentioned some of the targets before, but like what's your like freak bull prediction for the next like 4 to 6 months for SPX, and then how do you think about it longer term? Is this like a decade long asset? Like what's your time preference on SPX? Like how long do you think, if I was to just go like, all right, fuck it, I'm sticking the entire Rabby into SPX today, where do you think it's going to end up in 6 months? And then how far along the curve do you go?
I think 100 billion this cycle and 1 trillion next cycle. That remains my target. I do strongly believe it's going to be a multi-cycle phenomenon. XRP and Doge and a couple of others have proven that multi-cycle altcoins are very much possible. And I think this is going to be yet another multi-cycle story.
Dude, I did have one question from Twitter that I vetted. I've asked some. I've been checking the list and having a look and kind of chucking them in as we've gone. But one question from Twitter was like, which countries would you visit in future for tourist purposes? And I just thought that was a fucking interesting thing to chuck in the mix. Like, where is it that you want to go? Where have you been? What's the go?
This is like one of my favorite topics, actually.
Fuck yeah, dude.
So depending on what you're looking for, but I would say Norway is amazing for a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. Switzerland is amazing for a variety of reasons. One day I want to visit Fiji and explore the Pacific Ocean in general. I think that's like there are places that people kind of forget about, but I want to kind of go island to island on a boat. I think that would be very cool. I think visiting Antarctica is like, I think that would be like, to me that's luxury. To me that's like, these are the kind of things I like, you know? Yeah. I don't really care about like physical things, but I really care about like experiences and travel and stuff.
Why Antarctica?
First of all, I think 50 years from now, there's probably going to be less ice on it. So I think if I see it, I can see something that even my like great grandkids will not be able to see. And I think that's something that's like has an expiration date to it. I think Greenland is very interesting for similar reasons. I also want to go to Tristan da Cunha, which is like the most isolated island in the middle of the Atlantic. And I believe it was either that one or another one nearby. Actually, St. Helena, where Napoleon was in exile. And they have like this weird coffee, like very expensive, but also very particular coffee bean there that they kind of cultivate on the island. It's one of their main exports. So it's like smack dab in the middle. It's in the middle of nowhere in the Atlantic Ocean, and there's like nothing around it. And I think it's kind of cool. I think Africa is interesting as well. I would do it in a more like safe and sterile way though.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say these are some of the things that I find interesting.
So Sweden and Norway, is that just because they're like because they're kind of like ideal societies, or like what's the thinking around like those two as places to visit?
Yeah, I think they're actually I said Norway and Switzerland.
Yes, yeah.
I think these to me are the two closest examples in the world to a perfect society. Now, I'm not saying they're perfect, but I'm saying they're the closest to a perfect society. And I think in the case of Norway in particular, it's a big reason for why they're the way they are is because they are unbelievably wealthy, but also there's only like a couple million people living there. So essentially, the total national wealth divided by population, like they all have 300K in savings. That's what it comes down to, and that's why they're so nonchalant about everything. Also, the geology, right? There's some very crazy fjord sites there that you can see, very unique. stuff.
Yeah.
Similarly, in Switzerland, also very wealthy per capita. And a big thing for me is like low crime and safety and being civilized. I don't think it's a coincidence that these two countries are not EU members. I'm not going to dig deeper into that. If you know, you know. But essentially, I think also the fact that they have their own currencies is also a big reason why they've managed to stay relatively pure and cleaner in a variety of ways. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I would say those are my two favorite countries in Europe. I'm actually also very bullish on Poland. I visited last year, and it was unbelievably clean and civil.
I've heard this about Poland, like in terms of like you know, they've done like a big effort in kind of like, you know, conservative leadership's come in and been like, we're cleaning shit up. And yeah, I've also heard very bullish things on Poland. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also they've been the fastest growing economy since the fall of the Iron Curtain, which I believe they've essentially like grown their way to good level. You know what I mean? And they're just like they're hardworking people. They have like the lowest unemployment rate anywhere in the developed world. Essentially, they just work all day. They don't do anything else. It kind of reminds me of Japan's rise in the 60s and 70s as well. But also I would add Japan, Korea, and China to the list also. They're very fun. They're very fun, especially if you're like a foreigner visiting and just for enjoyment rather than somebody living there, in my opinion. But they're fun. They're fun to visit. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I had a very similar experience, particularly in China. Like Australia and China have a very like funny relationship where we sell each other buckloads of stuff. But for some reason in Australia, everyone's paranoid about China being like this freakish communist like dictatorship. But I lived there and I was like, yeah, this isn't that much of a like. There's elements that are much more like authoritarian than Western democracies, but the idea that it's like some horrific like iron-fisted fucking communist, it's like no, it's quite nice over there.
Yeah,
the people are lovely. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Media needs to paint that narrative occasionally, right?
Yep. Yeah. No. 100%. Dude, this has been a great way to kind of like round things out. It was really good to get the tourist spots. That's sick. Dude, what do you want people to go do after they finish listening to this? Where do you want them to go look? What do you want them to go check out?
Look into SPX6900. I believe it's going to be the next big thing. I'm going hard on it, and we're going to flip the stock market.
Fuck yeah. Dude, this has been awesome, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.